propaganda is out there in the mainstream now, not in the extreme corners of the right. And I bring this up because Meghan McCain went on air on the most popular show and said this.
So, Meghan, what's your thoughts on all of this as you sit and you watched what happened over the weekend?
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of different thoughts. I mean, I think it's easy to say that the Republican Party is only the party of QAnon and, you know, all these things. If that's the truth, then the Democratic Party is the party of socialism and late-term abortion and cancel culture and no responsibility or ramifications for any of your actions. And you can burn down cities like Kenosha and it's fine and there's no ramifications. These are broad stroke platitudes. I don't believe either are true. I don't think Republicans are simply QAnon supporters. I don't think Democrats are simply socialists. And the thing that I worry about right now is that we are not using our intrepid values to go forward and try and fight for what's still good in this country. And as long as we just keep going back and forth on this, there will be no resolution and things will only get worse. I will say in response to the impeachment hearings over the weekend and on Friday, you know, I think it's easy to think that we can just put this like delve of 25% of people, the crazy whatever, how the media is brandishing them, these crazy QAnon Trump supporters, and that they're gone and we're just going to shame them into not existence. But there's a lot of polls that have just come out that are reading the tea leaves really differently. There's a Morning Consult poll that says President Trump has a 77% approval rating. Only 27% of Republicans blame him for riots, and 81% of Republicans give him a positive marks all the way around. The thing that I would say is, as much as the left wants to act like that Republicans are only QAnon supporters, part of the problem is for someone like me, when I hear that, I automatically get very tribal, and I'm like, well, I don't want the left. Because for me, I am the most intensely pro-life person that I know of, particularly on mainstream TV. I believe that abortion is murder. I believe that life begins at conception. And I know that the opposite party says that, oh, there's some people that don't agree with me, that think that it's different, that think that abortion should happen up to late term. So I think the idea that the Republican Party is just one swath is just not nuanced.
Cool.
And the problem I have is the only way to become a good Republican is to become a Democrat, according to the media. And I don't know what to do anymore, because I can't keep coming on TV every day saying that we're all Nazis and you know, Hitler salutes and whatever. It's just not intellectually honest.
You know, it's not intellectually honest. You decided that you're siding with an entire party who, those people who went to the insurrection, they facilitated and covered for the insurrectionists, the Nazis, and like the worst people in the world. And your whole cover is, well, I really care about babies, which already in most states in this country already have extremely restrictive abortion laws. And I won't even get your mom, who has much looser terms for abortion, by the way. I know Arizona very well. So what infuriates me about this is that is cover. She's giving effing cover to the actual Nazis in her party. And the reason why I'm bringing this up in left media and I won't let it go is because this is growing. While socialism is growing, this is growing. And until we are ready to combat that and not effing Joe Biden, who's just this weakling who used some rules in the Democratic Party to win, unless you're willing to confront that, we have no path forward. Go for it, guys.
Yeah, that was all over the place. I'm curious, Nomi. I mean, you asked us a question earlier that I realized actually neither of us answered, which was about how do you prioritize? Because there are so many crises. And dealing with the propaganda war, how do you juggle it all? And that's I think actually if there's anyone that I would want to ask that question to, it's you. Like, I'm curious what you think about that, because this is your terrain, right, in media. And you know, I think for organizers, right, there's a pretty thin band of like, we have to counter disinformation that is reaching a certain group of people who are trying to organize, right? And so, but in terms of the broader society, the broader narrative, and in the, you know, the battle of the narrative, I learned from you, and I'm just so curious what you think about how we prioritize. What does that fight look like, other than what we're doing right now?
Well, before we go to me, maybe Napoleon has some thoughts, because I feel like he's He's got something in him.
I mean, I'm really also curious about what you think about it. I mean, it's like we used to talk about it actually, with Michael and stuff all the time about how do we fight. How does the left side of the media gain power and gain? Because it seems like the centrists, they have all the major media blocks, and the right wings have that huge machine, and they both have funding, and we don't have that type of funding. But,
tell me about it.
I mean, but I see a lot of people, such as yourself, such as the majority reports. I see the serfs. They take people like that to take them on, and they take them to task, and they bomb on them, like quote unquote, like every time they see things like that. How do we reach more people? I mean, that's the $1 million question. Like I know for me, from a cultural standpoint, I think it's important to bring artists and people from all walks of life that do have that type of vision from the world, and bring them in also, so we can show people that we are diverse, and it's also cool to be this way, because mainstream media kind of is more leaning towards the centrist liberal type. But we got to show that there's people that think like us that also are doing other things. I think that's important from a cultural standpoint. From a media standpoint, I mean, the propaganda war is it's a tough question. It's a tough question to answer.
I think this is the worst place we've been in a really long time. And I say generations. I don't mean like a year, 10 years. I mean, I really think since the internet, let's just say that, is absolutely the worst place we've been, without a doubt. It's just been growing and growing and growing because of the monopolization, because of the consolidation of the media enterprises. And I don't mean like censorship. That's it's a term that's often used when there's a grievance over some political statement. I'll just say it often comes up when, not always, make that very clear, it often comes up when there's a right winger who has gotten in trouble for saying something that is actually not protected under free speech, or maybe there's a debate over it. Not always, but great example would be like Mila Yiannopoulos. No one said you're protected because you screamed fire into a crowd, or Nazis, or incited violence, or whatever. What I am saying is there's a monopoly. I mean, the real fight, in my opinion, is over the challenge to markets, the challenge to capital. And if you are in a media space that at one point, 2 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, you had more of an ability to monetize, pay bills, get viewers, whatever, while you were simultaneously challenging capital, it was different. It was just different. I think everything changed after Bernie. I think the way campaigns were run changed after Bernie. I think he threatened and he scared and he took everybody off guard because growing inequality in this country created fertile ground for Bernie's campaign, and many other crises that were happening, and a generation that was ready to support his policies because previous generations hadn't really protected them or gave them false promises of great jobs after taking out hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt or whatever it is. It was fertile ground. And then the internet made it the viral effect of Bernie just so much more profound. And I think media empires, I think political campaigns and institutions, and I think political fundraising, they all did whatever they could to make sure it was harder to break through. The democratization of political organizing, political fundraising, political media, and just straight up democratic politics. And Joshua, I appreciate you bringing me up. Like I have experience in a few of these places, and I'll say from the fundraising perspective, Facebook ads right now are still, political ads, as far as I understand, are banned. And on one hand, that's like great, so that like Nazis can't raise money and like push things out, and Cambridge Analytica is not able. But with that being said, there's still tons of fake accounts out there and troll accounts that are used as weapons to silence people. And simultaneously, candidates, I think this next cycle, we have to watch it it's going to be very hard for them to raise money. And I say that because they can't buy ads. When you can't buy ads, you can't raise money. Grassroots, it's much harder to build your email list. It's much harder to break through the algorithm. So I think it's going to be harder for more grassroots candidates to break through. And we're not even equipped with understanding what that means now. Napoleon, go ahead.
So, basically, it comes down to the money. I guess money makes the world go round. And they have access to a lot more than us. But I think it comes back to organizing and fundraising and supporting our platforms and growing them and keep pushing that aspect, because like I said, I think that and I think you bring out a great point that some people are sleeping on what's going on the other side, and the infighting is not really helping us in any type of way. I would like to see, I sound like it's very cliche, but I would like to see a lot more solidarity coming up, because we're fighting. It's an uphill battle at every single point. Every time we climb a mountain, there's another mountain coming right after it. And if we don't band together, we don't help each other out, we don't uplift our message, every one of us, I think, I don't know if we could take on Goliath, you know what I'm saying? Because it is Goliath.
Joshua, you study movements. You studied all this sabotage that happens from capital and big business. What?
There's two things that at the end of the day, if we can deliver for people, the stories that are spun don't matter. The stories that are spun matter when people's lives aren't actually being improved, right? So when people are suffering, and because we have a consensus in this society that everything's broken. What the battle of the narrative is, why is it broken, who broke it, and what are the solutions? But if we start to win and actually deliver for people, that cuts through the noise. So that's thing number one, is at the end of the day, the brass tacks of real organizing, nothing can replace it. And delivering real wins is how you build a movement, period, full stop. The left is not credible within this country right now. And what I mean is the socialist left, because we haven't demonstrated proof of concept of our ability to govern in a broad enough way that people can see it and feel it. And once we do, I think the noise and the chatter matters a lot less. So that's thing number one, which doesn't mean that the propaganda doesn't need to be constantly fought. Of course it does. But I do believe that at the end of the day, the material conditions speak louder than the talking heads. But also, I've been grappling with this as like, when there is a whatever different estimate, let's say 35% of the country is in their own story, their own narrative bubble that's completely impervious to anything else. What do you do with that, right? And the answer is to out-organize them in the short term. There's no reaching those people in the short term, I think, at least not in this broad way that we're talking about. I think if you're doing local organizing, obviously finding common ground is exactly the work that needs to be happening, and that you find, my whole life I've been building unlikely alliances. But I think that kind of the group that's in the more hermetically sealed bubble. So I'm not just talking about discounting right wingers in general, but I mean that, that group of people in the near term, we just have to out organize them. It's just that simple.
It was, I'm like, how did people used to do it when they were handing out pamphlets? Like, how did they overthrow governments? Like, how did they do it? What was it? They had military swooping in, and their only way of communicating was knocking on doors and handing out pamphlets. And are we becoming too, comfortable with this media rather than doing the hard work? People are organizing, people are knocking on doors, even with this pandemic, even with social distancing, et cetera. But are we becoming overly reliant on media platforms and not simultaneously understanding that the hard work on the ground is actually traditionally, historically, what got us out of these, if we were able to fight back in any way?
I think we are. I definitely think we are. I mean, it's easy for us. It's easy to click like, it's easy to click share, and we're all so used to doing it. And I see it. It's in every field. I feel like it's the same way. You know what I mean? Like I keep bringing up music. It's the same thing. People think you could just post your album cover on Instagram and then people are gonna magically, sell. When now it's harder with COVID. You have to do shows. You have to show up. People have to be able to feel you. You have to, talk to people, shake hands, and that's exactly goes hand to hand with what Joshua does. His expertise, organizing. We need to engage with people on a personal level, face to face.
Well, it's like what you're saying, Napoleon, about belonging, like if you're part of a real life social movement that's off the internet, you're building a real community that supports you, right? It doesn't just give you meaning and purpose. It's also like, when you're sick, people take care of you. There's real relationships that are built that actually, it's like when the crisis hits, whatever it is, the most important thing is to know your neighbors. Online connections don't do that. What the media algorithm does is it keeps us outraged and alienated, and in that cycle, and it creates the illusion of meaning because you get the dopamine hit, right? That's factored into the addiction of the internet. And so that's also my interest is I think online communication is really important. And I think new media is really important. What I'm trying to separate out is what's its role in a broader ecosystem, because I haven't seen it translate that well into organizing. But I think the huge number of people who right now are looking for answers about why things are so bad. It's why shows like this, shows like Majority, I think these shows are really important, but as an organizer, I'm trying to figure out how do you translate one into the other? How do you translate sort of a new media audience into a base, right, of people? Those aren't the same thing. And I haven't figured it out yet. I'm curious, and so, yeah.
I mean, one thing and this is sort of the question of the last decade since participant media started, which was all about using media to create direct action. When I was at TYT, we did all this on the ground organizing after Trump. And I can say for sure, whether it was intentional or not, there were people who watched our on the ground filming of organizing and interviews with activists, and whether it was the going against the IDC or anti-Trump efforts or Puerto Rican politics, which was one of the most revealing things to me, was folks were tuning in and getting inspired and learning and showing up, and they were inspired to run, and really big name folks decided to run and now are elected, and smaller, local organizers and union members. I mean, we get messages all the time because we'll have people like yourself on and they're inspired by your work, or Jane McAlevey, or they'll see organizations that they can volunteer for. So whether it's like a direct facilitated effort or just, the right incited, hopefully what I believe is we inspire. Thanks for watching and listening to The Nomiki Show. But remember to click like and subscribe on YouTube, and please share on social media. If you're not already a patron, please join us for as low as $5 a month on patreon.com/The Nomiki Show for early and special content. That investment makes a huge difference. We are not corporate media raking in the dough. It's really you guys that are keeping us going. So please consider being a patron. And to our current patrons, thank you so much. We are incredibly grateful to you. We also now have swag. So check us out on thenomikishow.com to get your mugs, your totes, and your stickers.